the little alien girl and the human promise. The sky was full of fire. Bombs fell like rain on the alien colony of Virex 7. Families ran, children screamed, and buildings shook. The once beautiful green land was now black with smoke and dust. Among the chaos, a small alien girl with light purple skin and glowing green eyes tried to find her mother, but there was no sign of her. She was only 13. She ran barefoot, heart pounding, tiny hands shaking. Her clothes were torn, her hair messy, and her feet bleeding. Soldiers shouted in strange languages, explosions lit up the ground. She cried out, "Mama!" But no one answered. In the middle of the chaos, a human repair truck stopped near a broken station gate. The driver, a young human mechanic named Reed, jumped out. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't even supposed to be there. But he had come to fix a shuttle that had broken down during the attack. As he opened his toolkit, he heard a small cry. He looked around and saw her. The little alien girl stood alone, eyes full of fear, body shaking. Reed dropped his tools and ran to her. She backed away, afraid. But he knelt down slowly and said, "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." She looked at him for a moment. Then suddenly she jumped forward and wrapped her arms around him. She was trembling. "Are you alone?" Reed asked. She nodded. "Where's your family?" She pointed at the sky where smoke rose from the far side of the colony. Her lips quivered. "Gone." Reed sighed. "Okay, come with me." He picked her up and carried her back to the truck. The girl stayed silent, watching him with wide, glowing eyes. She held his hand tightly, as if letting go would mean being lost again. At the evacuation center, alien refugees were being loaded into shuttles. There were too many people, and not enough ships. Children were crying, and guards were shouting names. Reed pushed through the crowd and carried the girl to the front. "She's alone," he told the alien guard. "She needs a place." The guard nodded and took her name. As they waited for her shuttle, Reed knelt beside her. "What's your name?" She looked up and whispered, "Lura." "Lura." He smiled. "That's pretty." She smiled for the first time. "What's your name?" she asked. "Reed." She repeated it softly. "Reed. Thank you." Then, suddenly, her little hand touched his. She took some dust from her pocket, a glowing blue powder, and drew a strange symbol on his skin. Reed looked confused. "What's that?" "A promise," she said. "In my culture, it means I will marry you one day." Reed's eyes went wide. "What?" "When I grow up," she added quickly, "I'll come find you, and I'll marry you." He laughed awkwardly. "You're just a kid." She frowned, serious. "You saved me. You're kind. You didn't sell me. You didn't throw me away." Reed blinked. That was a strange thing to say. What had this child seen? Before he could answer, the guards called Lura's name. Her shuttle was ready. She stood up, still holding his hand. "Promise me you'll remember." Reed nodded slowly. "Okay, Lura. I'll remember." She stepped onto the shuttle, turned back one last time and said, "When I return, don't forget." And then she was gone. Reed stood there for a long time, watching the shuttle fly into the stars. He looked at the glowing mark on his hand. It faded slowly, but the feeling stayed. He never expected to see her again. She was just a scared little girl. He was just a mechanic trying to help. But in that moment, she had made a promise. And far away, in the corner of space, Lura sat in silence in the crowded ship. She held her hands to her chest and whispered, 6 years. I'll come back when I'm ready." The moon above Outpost 17 was bright, casting silver light over the dusty repair yard. Reed stood alone in the cool night, wiping oil from his hands. He had just finished fixing a broken cargo engine. His life was quiet now. No war, no danger, just machines, silence, and the occasional drunk trader asking for help. But tonight, something was different. As Reed walked toward his small metal cabin, a sudden knock came at the door. Sharp, not hurried, just firm. He froze. It was late. No one visited this far from the main hub unless something was wrong. He opened the door. Standing there was a tall, cloaked figure. The face was hidden under a deep hood. Long silver hair peeked out, glowing slightly in the moonlight. The figure said nothing at first. Just stared at him. Reed narrowed his eyes. "Can I help you?" The figure slowly lifted the hood. His breath caught. A young alien woman stood before him. Her skin was a soft, radiant purple. Her eyes, green and glowing, held a quiet fire. Her face was older, sharper than the child he remembered, but familiar. Too familiar. "Laura," he said, almost whispering. She nodded. "I told you I'd come back." Reed took a step back, stunned. "That was years ago. You were just a kid." 13, she said softly. "Now I'm 19, and I'm not a little girl anymore." She stepped inside without asking. Her movements were graceful, calm, but every step held purpose. She looked around his small home, tools on the table, half-eaten sandwich, dusty shelves. "You really live alone?" she asked. Reed shut the door behind her. "Yes. It's quieter that way." She turned, eyes locking onto his. "I came a long way to find you." "I didn't think you meant it," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "You were scared. You'd lost everything. Kids say things." Laura's voice cut through softly. "But I never forgot." She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small pouch. It was old, faded, but she held it with both hands like treasure. She placed it on the table. "I carried this every day. It has my family threads, the ones we use in bonding vows." Reed looked at the pouch, then at her. "You came here to marry me?" "I came here to fulfill my promise." There was silence between them. The air felt heavier. "You don't know me anymore," Reed said. "You were a child. I'm just some mechanic who helped." "You were the only one who didn't look at me like I was nothing," Laura said. "You didn't ask for money. You didn't sell me to someone richer. You didn't even ask my name. You just helped." Her voice trembled a little, but she stood tall. "I traveled across 4 systems. I worked, studied, survived. I was offered to others along the way. But I remembered your face, your hands, your kindness." Reed sighed. "You didn't have to come back for me." "I wanted to," she said. He walked to the window, looking out at the night sky. "Laura, I'm twice your age." She smiled gently. "Not in my culture." He turned. "I'm not special. I fix ships. I eat cold noodles. I talk to machines." She stepped closer. "I don't care about fame. I don't need gold. I just need someone who makes me feel safe. You did that when I was weak. Now I'm stronger. But I still want to stand beside you." Reed looked at her again. She was not the fragile child he once knew. She was taller now, a fighter. The scars on her arms showed battles. Her gaze was steady. She had lived, struggled, grown. But her voice still held the softness of that scared girl who had held his hand long ago. "Stay here tonight," Reed said at last. "We'll talk more in the morning." Laura nodded. "Thank you." He gave her his bed and took the small couch. But sleep didn't come. That night, Reed lay staring at the ceiling, heart restless. His mind was full of old memories, of a dusty colony, a frightened girl, and a promise drawn on his hand. He looked down at his palm. There was no symbol left, but somehow he still felt it. And in the next room, Laura sat on the edge of the bed, holding the pouch close. Her lips moved silently as she whispered, "Step 1 complete. He remembers." The morning light filtered through the workshop's window, landing softly on Reed's face. He woke with a stiff neck and a heavy heart. The events of last night weren't a dream. She was still here. Laura, the little girl he once saved, had returned. No longer a child, but a full-grown woman. She had traveled across galaxies for a promise he barely remembered, and now she was sleeping just 10 feet away in his bed. Reed stood up quietly and walked into the small kitchen area. He made hot tea and stared at the steam rising from the cups. As he placed one cup on the table, he heard soft footsteps. Laura appeared, wearing one of his oversized shirts. Her silver-white hair was tied back and her green eyes still looked serious yet calm. "You didn't run away," she said softly. "I didn't sleep much," he replied. She took the cup of tea and sat across from him. For a moment neither spoke. The quiet buzz of tools and distant ship engines was the only sound. Then, Laura broke the silence. "You promised to marry me." Reed looked at her, surprised. "That again?" "Yes," she said simply. "I know I was just a kid. I know you were being kind. But I remembered everything." Reed rubbed his hands together. "Laura, I don't even know what to say." "Say you meant it," she said, eyes locked on his. "Or say you didn't." He looked down. "I didn't think you'd come back. I thought I'd forget your face after a few years, but I didn't." "That means something," she whispered. He sighed. "You were just a scared girl. I helped because it was the right thing to do. I didn't expect you to carry this promise, like it was real." Laura stood up slowly and walked to him. Her voice was low but steady. "Reed, I didn't carry this promise because I was desperate. I carried it because it gave me strength." She pulled back her sleeve, revealing a small scar shaped like the symbol she had once drawn on his hand. It was faint, but clear. "This mark reminded me that there was one person in the universe who didn't see me as a burden," she continued. "I told myself that if I became someone worthy, I would return. And I did." Reed stared at the mark, speechless. "I trained," Laura said, her voice growing stronger. "I worked with ship crews. I fought pirates. I studied humans, learned your language, culture, and history. I gave up everything just to be strong enough, to stand beside you, not behind you." Reed's heart beat faster. This wasn't some childish fantasy. She had lived through pain, fire, and time, and she had chosen to come back. He stood up and took a step back, overwhelmed. "But why me? You could have found someone younger, richer, smarter." Laura shook her head. "You don't get it, do you?" She walked up to him, placing a hand on his chest. "I don't need anyone richer. I don't need grand promises or perfect futures. I just want someone who will look at me and see me. Not a weapon, not a slave, not a tool, just me. You did that, and I've never forgotten." Reed's lips trembled. He looked away. "I don't know how to be a husband," he admitted. "Then learn," she said. "With me." Silence fell again. But this time, it was not cold. It was warm. Familiar. After a moment, she pulled something from her pouch. A small glowing band made of violet threads. She held it up. "In my world," she whispered, "this is the sign of bonding. I made this for you." Reed looked at the band, then back at her. "I haven't done anything to deserve this." "You saved a child once," she replied. "That's more than most ever do." He reached out slowly and took the band in his hands. It felt warm, alive, like it carried her heart in its fibers. "I can't give you a perfect life," he said. "I don't want perfect," she smiled. "I want real." Finally, after all the years, Reed smiled back. "Okay, Laura," he said. "I won't run from this." She exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing for the first time since she arrived. "And I won't let you," she said playfully. They sat down again, tea gone cold. But they didn't care. Outside, the suns began to rise higher, and with them something new started to grow. Something both fragile and strong. A future built on a promise. The repair yard had never been this quiet. Since Laura arrived, Reed's life had changed, but not in the way he feared. She didn't sit around waiting. She worked beside him, fixed engines, organized tools, even helped customers when he was too tired. She was calm, focused, and sharper than anyone Reed had ever met. Word spread fast across the trade zone. A rare alien woman was living with a human mechanic. Many didn't believe it at first. But then the ships began to arrive, slowly at first. Then more. They didn't come for repairs. They came for her. The first guest was a merchant captain named Philo, dressed in golden robes. He stepped into Reed's shop, smiled, and said, "I heard you have something beautiful under your roof. I'd like to make an offer." Reed didn't even look up from the engine he was fixing. "She's not for sale." "Oh, no. Philo chuckled. "Not like that, I mean a job. My crew needs someone smart and skilled. She could have her own quarters, good food, jewels." Laura stepped out from the back room, wiping grease from her hands. "She already has a place," she said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere." Philo blinked, then forced a smile. "Think about it. My offer stands." He left, but more followed. Miners, smugglers, even nobles. They came with gifts, credits, gold coins, some with promises of planets and palaces. They stared at Laura like she was a prize, not a person. Each time Reed stood beside her. Each time she refused. But then came the night someone didn't ask. Reed woke to the sound of glass shattering. It was deep into the night, and the wind outside had picked up. At first he thought it was just a storm. But then came the noise. Metal. Clanging. Feet stepping where they shouldn't. A cold breeze slipped into the room. He rushed out of bed. The workshop door was open. He grabbed a metal rod and ran outside. There, in the shadows, were 3 figures. One held Laura, pinning her arms. The other 2 were dragging her toward a ship parked near the edge of the landing zone. "Reed?" she screamed, her voice cutting through the night. He charged forward, with no thought swinging the rod into the nearest man's arm. There was a crack and a howl of pain. Laura elbowed the one holding her and dropped to the ground. Reed stood in front of her, breathing hard, rod raised. The tallest intruder pulled out a stun blade. "She belongs to the merchant now. Step aside, human." "She belongs to no one," Reed growled. The man lunged. Reed fought harder than he ever had. The blade grazed his side, burning hot, but he didn't stop. Laura joined in, spinning low, kicking out legs, using a wrench to knock one to the ground. Within moments, all 3 attackers were groaning in the dirt. Sirens began to sound in the distance. Security forces were coming. The attackers ran, leaving behind a torn sack of credits and a broken blade. Inside, Laura helped patch up Reed's wound. Her hands were steady, but her face was pale. She had seen this before. On slave worlds, in back alleys, in places where beings were bought and sold. She had just never thought it would happen again. Not here. "I'm sorry," Reed said, wincing. "I should have seen this coming." Laura shook her head. "It's not your fault. I should have known they wouldn't stop at words." She sat beside him, quiet. Then she spoke, voice cold and clear. "I'm going to register under bonded status." Reed blinked. "What does that mean?" "In your human laws, nothing. But under alien code, if I'm listed as your bonded partner, no one can take me without your permission, not even with money." Reed stared at her. "Are you sure?" "I am," she said. He hesitated. "Laura, it sounds like a real marriage." She looked at him. "It is." Reed said nothing. Then slowly, he nodded. "Then let's do it." The next morning, they visited the Alien Council office. Papers were signed. Symbols were drawn on skin. Laura gave Reed a second woven band, this one with golden threads. He wore it without question. When they returned, he added her name to the workshop sign outside. Reed and Laura Repairs. The people noticed. From that day on, no one tried to take her. Not because they feared her, but because they feared him. The quiet human who fought 3 men in the dark and signed a warrior as his partner. Reed thought life might go back to normal after that. But it didn't. Because trouble was only just beginning. The days after the attack passed in silence, but something between Reed and Laura had changed. Outside, the workshop ran as usual. Ships came in, repairs were made, and customers were served. But inside, the quiet moments grew longer, heavier. They shared meals without speaking, worked side by side without smiles, slept under the same roof, but their thoughts never met. One night, as the twin moons glowed above Outpost 17, Laura stood by the window, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the stars. Reed watched her from the doorway, unsure of what to say. She hadn't laughed in days. Finally, she spoke. "Do you ever think, you made a mistake?" Reed blinked. "About what?" "About me," she said, voice barely a whisper. "Letting me stay, signing the bond." Reed frowned. "Why would I think that?" Laura turned toward him slowly. "Because you haven't looked at me the same since that night. Not like before." He stepped forward. "That's not true." "Then why won't you touch me?" she asked, her voice tight now. "Why do you sleep on the couch when there's space beside me?" Reed opened his mouth, but no words came. She stepped closer. "Am I still that little girl in your eyes? Am I a problem you don't know how to handle?" Reed looked down. "Laura, I'm scared." Her face softened, but she didn't interrupt. He continued. "You're brave, you're strong. You crossed galaxies just to keep a promise, but I don't know what I'm doing. I've never been a partner, never been married. I fix machines because they're simple. You're not. I never asked you to be perfect," Laura said. "I asked you to be honest." Reed nodded slowly. "Then here's the truth. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to be something you regret." "I already regret one thing," she said. He looked up. "What?" "Waiting 6 years to come back." She stepped even closer and placed a hand over his. "You're not the only one who's scared, Reed. I didn't grow up learning love. I grew up learning survival, but I chose you. And if you let me, I'll keep choosing you." Reed stared at her, breath caught in his chest. Then suddenly a knock came. At the door, they both turned. It was one of the local security officers, a thick-jawed man with a badge and a data pad. "We've had a formal challenge filed," the officer said. Reed blinked. "What kind of challenge?" "Marriage challenge under Interplanetary Code 7C, the officer explained. "Someone claims Laura belongs to them. They're requesting a trial." Laura's face went cold. "Who?" The officer hesitated. "Captain Varric, former slaver. Claims he has proof of ownership predating your bond." Reed's jaw tightened. "That's impossible. She was never a slave." The officer shrugged. "He says otherwise. Trial is tomorrow at dawn. She'll have to speak. You'll have to defend her." As soon as the officer left, Reed turned to her. "You know this man?" "I escaped his crew years ago," she said bitterly. "He must have found my name on the registry." "Then we'll fight it," Reed said without hesitation. Laura looked at him. "Even if it means they drag you into alien court? Even if you lose your license, your job?" "I'd lose everything," Reed said, "before I ever lose you." The next morning, the trial was held in the neutral chambers of the trade hub. Aliens from many species gathered to watch. Captain Varric stood tall and arrogant, flashing fake documents and grinning with sharp teeth. "She was mine before she fled," he said. "This human bonded her illegally." The judge turned to Reed. "Do you have proof this woman was not owned?" Reed stood, heart pounding. "She was a child when I saved her. No collar, no brand. She was alone. She drew a promise on my hand. That's the only mark she ever carried." Then Laura rose. She didn't speak right away. She walked to the center of the room, took off her long coat and pulled down her sleeve. There was a faint mark on her wrist, the glowing symbol of her own culture. She was marked. Varric shouted. Laura raised her voice, sharp as lightning. "This is my mark, one I gave myself when I was 13, to keep a promise to the human who saved me." The room fell quiet. She turned to the judge. "I was never a slave. I was hunted, sold, traded, but I was never owned. I escaped and found the only person who never asked for anything in return. That's who I belong to by choice." The judge paused, then slammed the gavel. Case dismissed. Bond upheld. Varric cursed and stormed out. Back at the shop, Reed, and Laura stood together in the soft glow of sunset. "No more running," Reed said quietly. "No more doubt," Laura replied. He took her hand gently this time. No fear, no hesitation. And when she leaned her head against his shoulder, he closed his eyes and finally let her in. The sun was high above Outpost 17, and everything looked calm, but inside Reed's chest, something felt off. He had spent the morning repairing a coolant system while Laura was out gathering supplies. She insisted on going alone. "I'll be back before lunch," she had said with a soft smile and a kiss on his cheek. That had been hours ago. Now the shadows were longer. The heat of the sun faded, and a strange quiet fell over the yard. Reed stood near the workbench, wiping grease off his hands when a buzzing came from the emergency comm unit. He rushed over and answered. Static filled the speaker. Then a voice. Shaky, broken. "Reed." "Help." His stomach dropped. "Laura?" He shouted into the mic. "Where are you?" More static. Then a whisper. "Landing bay. D4. Trap." Then silence. Reed didn't think. He grabbed a pulse wrench and a compact blaster, jumped onto his transport and sped toward the lower sector of the station. The air grew colder, darker. D4 wasn't part of the public market. It was a forgotten strip used by smugglers and black market dealers. He arrived within minutes, heart hammering. The place was empty. Then he heard it, a low moan behind a crate. Laura. He ran forward and found her slumped on the ground, one leg cut, wrists bound, face bruised but eyes open. "Reed," she whispered. It was a trick. They said they had a gift for the shop. He pulled out a blade and cut her free. Before she could stand, heavy footsteps echoed around them. A group of 6 men stepped from the shadows, armed, armored, and grinning like wolves. "You just couldn't stay away, could you, human?" One of them sneered. "You made this harder than it had to be." Reed stood in front of Laura, raising his blaster. "Touch her," he said coldly, "and I'll bury all of you right here." They laughed. Then came the sound no one expected. Engines. Loud, roaring engines from above. Suddenly, a team of trade station guards dropped from a patrol skiff. Energy weapons lit the shadows. "Stand down!" the lead officer shouted. "This sector is now under lockdown." The attackers froze, then scattered. Reed held Laura close as the guards surrounded them. "What happened here?" the officer asked. "They tried to take her," Reed said. Again, hours later, back at the shop, Reed sat by her side, bandaging her leg. She didn't cry. She didn't even wince. But her silence said everything. "This was my fault," she finally whispered. "I thought I was being strong, going alone, showing I didn't need protection." "You are strong," Reed said, placing a hand over hers. "But strength isn't doing everything alone. It's knowing when to let someone fight with you." She looked up at him, tired. "You came for me, I knew you would." He nodded. "Always." Her fingers brushed the side of his face, touching the cut on his jaw. "You got hurt again." "Just a scratch," he said. "But I'll heal," she whispered. "I've healed worse. But when I heard your voice yelling my name, I wasn't scared anymore." They sat there for a long time in the soft glow of the workshop lamps. Laura's head rested on his shoulder, Reed's arm wrapped gently around her. She opened her pouch once more, the one she always carried. This time, she took out something Reed hadn't seen before, a small piece of crystal shaped like a flame. "What's that?" he asked. "A gift from my mother," she said softly. "She gave it to me before she died. She told me to give it only to the person I trust with my life." Reed stared at it, unsure. "I want you to have it," she said. "Laura." "Take it," she said firmly. "I don't care about bloodlines or titles. You're my home." He reached out and gently took the crystal. It glowed for a moment in his palm, reacting to his touch. "I'll protect you until my last breath," he whispered. "I know," she replied. Later that night, Reed sat outside under the stars thinking. about everything that had happened. So many had tried to take her, so many had failed, but each time she had come back to him, each time she had chosen him. He wasn't a warrior, he wasn't rich or famous, but he had something they didn't, a promise and a heart that never let go. Behind him, the door opened quietly. Lura stepped out wearing his coat, limping a little but smiling. "Reed?" she asked. "Yeah?" "I want a real wedding," she said. He turned toward her, surprised. "Now?" "Soon," she said, "before someone else tries to steal me again." He stood, walked over, and pulled her into his arms. "Let them try," he said. "Next time they'll face both of us." The stars above Outpost 17 never looked brighter. The twin moons shone like silver lanterns in the sky, and a soft wind moved across the quiet dunes outside the repair yard. But this night was different. This night was sacred. Reed stood in the guy, clearing behind the workshop, dressed in a dark vest and clean trousers. Simple, but neat. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his collar. He had fought pirates, challenged a slaver, stood up in court, but nothing made his heart beat faster than this moment. Tonight, he wasn't just a mechanic, he was a groom. Behind him, the small crew of local traders, station guards, and even a few former customers stood in silence, watching. Lanterns floated in the air, glowing with soft golden light. Some humans, some aliens, all were witnesses. Then the soft music began. Everyone turned as Lura stepped out from the building, walking slowly, one step at a time. Her dress was made from spare ship fabric, silver and blue, flowing like water. Her hair was braided with small lights woven through, and in her hands, she held the glowing flame crystal from her mother. But her eyes, her bright green eyes, were fixed only on Reed. As she reached him, there was no nervousness in her face, only peace. The elder from the council stood between them. He was a short, thick-skinned alien who spoke both human and galactic languages. "Under the sky of both worlds," he said, "you have come to bind hearts." Reed and Lura faced each other, holding hands. "Speak your truth," the elder said. Lura went first. Her voice was clear. "I crossed galaxies to find you again. Not because I needed saving, but because you were the only place I ever felt safe. I walked through fire, pain, hunger, and silence. And still, I remembered your hand. You didn't see a broken girl. You saw me. You gave me a reason to live." She paused, then smiled. "And now I give you all of me." Reed swallowed hard. His voice shook slightly, but he didn't look away. "You were just a child when you promised to marry me. I thought you'd forget. I thought it was a moment lost in war. But you remembered. You returned, not as a girl, but as the bravest woman I've ever known. I didn't save you. You saved me. You reminded me what it feels like to be chosen, to be needed." He took a deep breath. "And now I promise to walk beside you, not ahead or behind, as partner, as home." The elder nodded and raised a hand. "Place the bond." Lura took out the woven thread ring she had crafted all those years ago. It shimmered, with violet and gold. She gently tied it around Reed's wrist. Reed did the same, using a thin copper wire he had saved from her first repair job. He wrapped it gently around her wrist like a symbol, strong, flexible, humble. "By the stars above and the worlds below," the elder declared, "you are now bound, by heart and by vow." The small crowd clapped, cheered, and smiled. But Reed and Lura didn't hear them. They were lost in each other's eyes. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the lights had dimmed, Reed and Lura sat outside on the rooftop. No speeches, no music, just the stars and silence. Lura leaned her head on his shoulder. "It wasn't a fancy wedding," she whispered. Reed smiled. "It was perfect. I never imagined it would end like this," she said, "that the girl, hiding in a corner of a burning city, would become someone's wife." "You didn't become someone's wife," Reed corrected gently. "You became my wife. She laughed softly and closed her eyes. I'm glad I came back. He kissed the top of her head. I'm glad you kept the promise. For a long time they sat like that, hand in hand, watching the sky. Then Laura looked up. Reed? Yeah? I think I want to build something. More here. He looked at her. Like what? She smiled, eyes glowing. Not machines this time. Something alive. Something that calls us both home. Reed froze for a second. Then his smile widened. He understood. We'll build it, he whispered. Together, under alien stars, they dreamed of a family, of a future, of a life where no one ran, no one hid, and no one was ever alone again. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, a faint mark on an old shuttle wall still glowed. The same mark a 13-year-old girl once drew on a human's hand. A promise kept. A vow fulfilled.